How does a tiny island with virtually no natural resources transform into one of the world's richest and most stable countries? Singapore's journey under Lee Kuan Yew defies conventional expectations of democracy and freedom, achieving incredible prosperity through a tight grip on power. With a population as diverse and fractious as any, how did Lee avoid the chaos that overwhelms so many young nations? What was the secret to turning Singapore into a global financial and technological hub while maintaining strict political control? This story forces us to reconsider what leadership and success truly mean in the modern state. A nation divided at birth. In 1965, Singapore's brief union with Malaysia ended abruptly. Expelled amid rising political, ethnic, and economic tensions, the young island suddenly stood alone. Leaders in Kuala Lumpur viewed Singapore's Chinese-majority population and growing economic ambition with suspicion. For Singapore, frustration over unequal treatment escalated into open hostility. Independence was not a triumphant choice. It was a forced separation that left the nation isolated and vulnerable. Internally, the situation was just as fragile. The population was a complex mix of Chinese, Malays, and Indians, each with distinct languages, cultures, and grievances. Nearly three-quarters of families lived in crowded housing estates where economic disparity and mistrust fueled tension. Racial riots were not distant memories but recent warnings. Social cohesion was fragile, and unrest could easily erupt again. Singapore also lacked natural resources. No fertile land, no minerals, no strategic depth. Many doubted the tiny island could survive on its own. Yet Lee Kuan Yew saw opportunity within crisis. He believed survival required discipline, unity, and firm control. What emerged was a highly centralized system designed to suppress division and enforce stability. Critics would later call it authoritarian. Supporters would call it necessary. Either way, it would define Singapore's path forward. To build such a functioning and resilient state, Lee Kuan Yew turned first to a powerful tool: the creation of a bureaucratic engine. Building a bureaucratic machine. At the heart of Lee Kuan Yew's strategy was an emphasis on a clean, efficient, and disciplined bureaucracy. Corruption had been a severe problem during Singapore's colonial past and early independence years, threatening to dismantle progress before it could take hold. Lee acted swiftly, establishing a strict anti-corruption bureau with broad powers to investigate and prosecute officials and businessmen alike. This zero-tolerance stance sent shockwaves through society and government, signaling that no one was above the law, not even ministers. Beyond fighting graft, Lee centralized control within a passionate cadre of public servants who were handpicked for merit and loyalty. This bureaucracy was lean but powerful, tasked with executing policies cohesively across all sectors of society. Discipline and obedience were enforced, ensuring that even civil servants who erred faced swift consequences. This approach created a state apparatus that operated almost like a corporate machine, technocratic, efficient, and forward-looking. It allowed Singapore to implement nationwide projects and reforms rapidly, from housing to education, without the gridlock often seen in more democratic systems. This bureaucratic foundation was complemented by a political culture that revolved around order and control. Lee's People's Action Party dominated politics from the start, maintaining a firm grip by limiting dissent and managing media narratives. Political opponents found themselves marginalized through legal and procedural means. It was a system designed to keep the fragile multi-ethnic society stable and focused on development rather than division. Despite entrenched insecurity on the home front, Lee faced equally daunting challenges beyond its shores that would force Singapore to navigate a maze of hostility. Navigating regional hostility. Singapore's geographic position made it a flashpoint in a turbulent Southeast Asia. In 1965, the end of its union with Malaysia was just the beginning of diplomatic and security struggles. Hostile neighbors were slow to accept Singapore's sovereignty. In 1967, Lee played a crucial role in founding the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to foster regional cooperation, but tensions remained. Indonesia's policy of confrontation and economic competition with Malaysia spilled over towards Singapore, occasionally erupting in violent episodes. The bombing in 1965 by Indonesian-backed militants was a stark warning that external threats were real and persistent. Lee responded to these dangers with a blend of decisive diplomacy and uncompromising internal security measures. He cultivated strong alliances with Western powers, securing support from the United States and Britain, which maintained a military presence critical for deterrence. Meanwhile, Singapore's own security forces were expanded and professionalized, relentlessly rooting out perceived subversives and terrorist cells. Intelligence gathering was intense, often drawing on practices learned from Israel, whose defense doctrines Lee admired. This allowed the tiny city-state to punch far above its weight in terms of homeland security and international diplomacy. Despite isolation and challenges, Lee's unyielding determination gave Singapore a platform to become respected internationally. Its success in weathering hostility and threats helped attract foreign investment, essential for economic growth. Lee's personal diplomacy bridged divides, bringing Singapore into global institutions like the United Nations with a seat at the table. However, even with diplomatic wins, the specter of violence was never far, cementing Lee's belief that security and strict governance were inseparable. Singapore was not just building an economy, it was constructing a fortress of stability in a restless neighborhood. From this precarious position, Singapore's leap into economic transformation was set in motion, and if you want to understand how survival became strategy, stay with us and don't forget to like and subscribe, backed by the very structures Lee painstakingly built. Economic transformation strategy. Lee Kuan Yew understood that Singapore's survival depended on one thing: economic success. With no natural resources to rely on, the island nation positioned itself as a global hub for trade and industry. Lee aggressively courted foreign investment, attracting multinational corporations like Texas Instruments, Hewlett-Packard, and General Electric. These firms brought capital, technology, and expertise, accelerating Singapore's rapid industrial transformation. The state played a central role in shaping this growth. Infrastructure was modernized, regulations streamlined, and business conditions carefully engineered to attract global companies, all under firm government oversight. Singapore adopted an export-oriented strategy, producing goods for international markets rather than depending on domestic demand. Education became a national priority. Schools and technical institutes were revamped to produce a disciplined, highly skilled workforce trained in engineering, science, and technology. At the same time, large-scale public housing projects ensured social stability, allowing workers to focus on productivity rather than basic survival. By the 1970s, Singapore's port ranked among the busiest in the world, and its financial sector was expanding rapidly. The city-state had emerged as a vital node in global supply chains. This was no laissez-faire miracle. It was a carefully managed model where political authority and economic planning moved in lockstep, laying the foundation for Singapore's meteoric rise. With the economy accelerating, Lee turned his attention inward, shaping society through policies designed to maintain order amid diversity. Social control and population policies. Maintaining unity in a multi-ethnic, multilingual society was one of Lee Kuan Yew's greatest challenges. His solution was deliberate social engineering. English was adopted as a common working language to bridge ethnic divides, while Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil were preserved within communities. This created shared economic opportunity without erasing cultural identity. Family planning became another key pillar. In the 1960s and early 1970s, the government launched the Stop at 2 campaign to slow population growth and protect limited national resources. Birth control education was expanded, and smaller families were incentivized to ease pressure on housing, schools, and healthcare. Later, as Singapore grew wealthier, policies shifted to encourage higher birth rates among targeted groups, demonstrating the state's adaptive interventionist approach. Education and housing further reinforced national cohesion. Schools promoted meritocracy, discipline, and loyalty. Public housing projects deliberately integrated ethnic groups, reducing the risk of communal conflict. These policies strengthened stability and economic progress, but they also expanded state influence deep into private life, reflecting Lee's belief that unity and survival justified firm, centralized control. From carefully planned economics to deliberate social control, Lee's Singapore was a model of order. But the legacy of this control continues to provoke debate today. Legacy of controlled prosperity. Singapore today stands as a global powerhouse, wealthy, orderly, and strikingly efficient. Its rise from poverty to prosperity within a single generation is often credited to Lee Kuan Yew's uncompromising leadership. Under his model, national stability and economic growth took priority over expansive political freedoms. Dissent was limited, media tightly regulated, and opposition carefully managed. The results were undeniable. Public housing reshaped living standards, education reforms built a world-class workforce, and corruption was aggressively stamped out. Trust in institutions grew, and Singapore became a hub for finance, trade, and technology. Yet the success came with trade-offs. Press freedoms remain restricted, surveillance is significant, and political competition operates within narrow bounds. Singapore's story endures as both inspiration and caution, a powerful example of disciplined governance delivering extraordinary results while raising enduring questions about the balance between prosperity and personal liberty in the modern state. Lee Kuan Yew's Singapore is a remarkable case of how disciplined governance and strategic control can reshape a nation's destiny. From deep divisions and insecurity to global economic leadership, his legacy shows the complex trade-offs behind stability and prosperity. If you found this story intriguing, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights into the world's most fascinating political transformations.